Welcome back to After the Battle. I'm your host, as always, Daniel Levi, your co-host, Shaq. We're going to be talking UFC 212, Aldo versus Holloway. And man, the biggest fight, in our opinion, of the featherweight division this year, finally happening on Saturday, man. Been waiting a long time for this one.
Yeah, man. I'm ready to see if the it's gonna be a passing of the new guard. Is Max gonna do it or not?
And joining us to break down UFC 212, our very special guest, the OG tout master, the 2 times DraftKings qualifier. I'm talking about Kyle Marley. Kyle, welcome back to After the Battle, man.
Hey, man, thanks for having me back on. Good to talk to you guys again about some fights.
You got it, man. And boys, let's get down to business because look, we got Antonio Carlos Jr. He's minus 225. The comeback on Eric Spicely is plus 185. I heard you got a strong opinion on this one, Shaq. I'm gonna let you go first, man. What are you thinking?
Man, to be honest, I just see Carlos Jr. being too much here. I mean, I know Spicy's got some slick jiu-jitsu, but I mean, let's not forget some of the mishaps. Not saying that Carlos Jr. hasn't had mishaps, but Spicy, I mean, we've seen this guy get choked out by Sam Alvey, you know what I'm saying? Take a knee against Elderte Sanchez, you know. I just think the longer this fight goes, the more grueling it gets. Carlos Jr. is just going to break him. I think we'll pick him apart on the feet with ease, to be honest. And I think, although he does have some good jiu-jitsu, if this fight gets in the second and third rounds, I just see the wrestling being too much. And I see him getting tired, and I see him folding, and I see Carlos Jr. breaking him and being a dominant fight.
You know, Carlos Jr. is a guy that went from being on my fade list to not being on my fade list. And in order for a fighter to do that, they got to really impress me and make improvements. And I'll tell you what, the improvements he made from that loss to Dan Kelly to that fight with Marvin Vettori, that showed me that, you know, he's been putting in work. He put his head down and grinded, and he's really serious about it now, man. And I think a lot of people forget that when he fought Dan Kelly, you know, he's only 23 years old. He's just a kid, you know what I mean? And not only that, he did dominate the first 2 rounds, but, you know, he had to take that L. He had to learn his lesson. And since that point, he had the chance to prove himself. You know, has his cardio gotten better in those later rounds? And I think he answered those questions in his last 2 fights, especially the Marvin Vettori fight. I mean, Marvin Vettori, he's a King's MMA southpaw. I mean, he's a very solid fighter. You know, look out for this kid. And he almost finished Antonio Carlos Jr. in the second round. And my question was always, can Antonio Carlos Jr. overcome adversity? Because I always thought he couldn't. In that fight, he overcame adversity. He comes out in the third round, and, you know, listen, he could have looked for the door right away, you know, based on how that second round went. But he comes out there in the third round, and he broke Vettori after Vettori almost finished him, and he took over that fight. I mean, dude, that's what I need to see right there to, you know, want to put my money on you. And when you talk about Eric Spicely, I mean, look, the jiu-jitsu is on point, no doubt about it. But, you know, if we're fighting Thiago Santos, who is basically a striker, and I got to give Eric Spicely credit for getting that win, but Antonio Carlos Jr. is not Thiago Santos. Antonio Carlos Jr. is a guy that tapped out Gary Tonin with a flying triangle. One does not simply tap out Gary Tonin with a flying triangle. That's the kind of caliber of jiu-jitsu we're talking about with Antonio Carlos Jr. And so basically, you know, Eric's been saying in interviews that he wants to go out there and knock out Carlos Jr. Well, you seen this guy striking before?
Yeah, come on.
You like, please do that. Like, the way he strikes, man, I mean, he lunges in there. It's all telegraphed. It's slow. It's unathletic. And, man, I think, you know, even though Carlos Jr., you know, his original martial art, his original base isn't striking, I think he's gonna have enough here to outstrike, potentially knock out Eric Spicely. But if it goes to the ground, we don't have to worry about all of Eric Spicely's slick shit because Carlos is gonna be able to neutralize that. So you know what, man, I'm gonna do a max bet on Carlos Jr. I got it at minus 210. It's currently minus 230. You know, as long as it stays under minus 250, I say you take a look there. Now, Kyle, what are you thinking about this one?
I agree, guys. Carlos Jr. all day. I'm not a Spicely fan. Never have been. And I think this line has a little bit of the Dan Kelly effect. Minus 225 is a little bit low. Yeah, I got to have a straight bet on Carlos Jr., and I'm parlaying him later with somebody in the card. From a DraftKings angle, I like Carlos Jr. in cash or GPP games. Spicely would only be a GPP kind of punt for me But yeah, I'm in with you guys all day. Carlos Jr. probably by finish.
You know what's the most worrisome part about this is whenever I'm really confident about a bet, I'm always thinking to myself, am I underestimating this guy? But at the end of the day, it's really going to be like, you know, I don't want to call it a fluke, but, you know, for Eric Spicely to do what he's best at, which is, you know, his submission game, he's got to get lucky here, man. Straight up.
He's fighting a jiu-jitsu world champion, so, I mean, let's see. Like, look, when he subbed DiCercio actually beat him in that wrestling exchange. It was just that he fell right into the triangle. Carlos Jr. is way too experienced to fall into something like that. Plus, you know, if we're questioning Carlos Jr.'s cardio, like, you know, which has failed him in the past, I mean, this guy's got the second and the fourth latest submission in light heavyweight history. I mean, middleweight history. So, I mean, I don't see the cardio being an issue anymore, at least for now.
I mean, the last two fights proved to me that he knew what he did wrong in that Dan Kelly fight. He learned from it, and he came back better. Now, with Eric Spicely, once again, these fights haven't been going past the first round, man. And the time we did see him go past the first round on The Ultimate Fighter, I mean, you know, there's a reason that Dana White, wasn't loving Eric Spicely out there. I'll tell you that.
Dana wanted to get him out of there. That's why they gave him the Alvi, and that's why they gave him the Thiago Santos after that. Thiago chose not to train at ATT for that fight, and he paid the price. But Carlos Jr. is at ATT. Make no mistake about it.
Man, you know, Musasi must have beat up Thiago Santos so bad that Thiago got a hammer on his chest. You know what I'm saying, man? But, dude, this fight right here between Marlon Moraes, he's minus 170, and Rafael Assuncao is plus 150. Now, I mean, as a gambling man, when I first saw the line, you know, when it was initially Rafael Assuncao plus 170, you know, I'm thinking to myself, a guy making his UFC debut is, you know, a minus 2-something favorite against, you know, the perennial top 5 guy, Rafael Assuncao. I mean, with Rafael, we're talking about a guy that has wins over TJ Dillashaw, Pedro Munoz, Brian Caraway, Johnny Eduardo. I can go on, man. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, Marlon Moraes, he's no slouch either. But, you know, before I watched the tape, I just thought, man, this is really disrespectful towards Rafael Assuncao considering who he is, what he's accomplished. And, you know, no one has an easy out with Rafael Assuncao. Even that TJ Dillashaw win that happened at UFC 200, I mean, that was a good fight. It was a good back and forth fight, just like their first one, man. But, you know, in this spot, man, once I went there and I watched the tape on Marlon Moraes, I got to tell you what, man, this kid's impressive, man. He's dynamic. The way he sets up his kicks, they come out of nowhere. And I understand, if you look at both their records, you know, one guy's been fighting the highest caliber guys in the UFC, and the other guy has been, you know, let's face it, he's been fighting scrubs in the World Series of Fighting, aside from Shayman Moraes, because Shayman's no slouch, so look out for that kid. But aside from that, you know, I mean, I remember when Marlon Moraes went to a split decision with Miguel Torres. That was the first time I was exposed to him, but ever since then, he's been evolving so much, and he's got that mentality of a champion. He knows what it's like to go 5 rounds. He knows what it's like to have the pressure of defending a belt, and I think, you know, dudes with a mentality like that, you know, such as David Branch, they can come into the UFC and beat a top 5 guy right off the bat. So, honestly, man, you know, yeah, obviously I want to favor the ATL boy, Rafael, but I mean, dude, look, we're making picks here, and obviously I'm scared to take a minus 170, you know, I don't like playing lines like that. And that UFC debut against Rafael, which, you know, remember when Pedro Munoz made his UFC debut against Rafael? You know, it's... Remember when Johnny Eduardo made his UFC debut against Rafael? You know what I'm saying? Rafael, I mean, he's literally the best gatekeeper, you know, in that division, man. But I think that Marlon's got something for him. I think that Marlon's faster in the exchanges. Even though Rafael is such a technical guy, he's very hard to look good against. Marlon Moraes is something special, man, and I actually think that he's going to come in here in his UFC debut and get this upset via decision.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much, you know, said a lot of good things. You know, I'm going to go with Rafael in this fight. You know, we did watch Marlon, and, you know, Marlon, I mean, he can kick hard, you know, but I actually think Rafael's faster in the exchanges with the hit, especially when they're throwing hands. You know, I think Marlon could be a little bit too rigid and, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, slow, you know, in the exchanges a little bit. I mean, we've seen him get dropped by Josh Hill. who's not a UFC level fighter. But he's got that championship mindset, you know what I'm saying? But my thing with Rafael, why I won't bet it is, at times I question if he really wants this, you know what I'm saying? I mean, he's always injured. His inactivity is not good. He barely fights, you know what I'm saying? He could be injured right now. If, as a betting man, you always have to have that in the back of your mind. The guy's always hurt. But I think Rafael is going to win a close decision. I was disappointed with the Aljamain Sterling fight, but granted, Sterling does not want to fight, you know what I'm saying? So, I think Marlon's going to present some openings. Rafael could land some slick counters, some sharp counters, and I think he'll win a 29-28 decision.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to say about Marlon. And, obviously, if Rafael wins, that's exactly how he's going to win. I mean, that's how he wins all his fights. It's very hard to look good against Rafael, but, Marlon's a guy that's been training with Frankie Edgar and Edson Barboza for years, and he's got Mark Henry as his striking coach, so he's going to be well prepared for this one. I'll tell you that much. Kyle, what's your perspective on this pivotal bantamweight matchup?
I'm excited for this fight, big time. I've been waiting for this kid to come to the UFC for a long time now, but I did not think they would give him a test like Assuncao for his first fight in the UFC, so I'm kind of torn. If I'm just picking a winner, I'm picking Marlon as well. But like Shaq, man, I mean, the 150, that's kind of hard to pass on with a debut versus a seasoned vet who's fought some great competition. So I'm kind of torn on this. There's no bet for me yet. Pick-wise, I'm definitely going Marlon for now. We'll see how the line moves. DraftKings, I like both guys, though. I mean, if you think Marlon can finish, then you got to pick him. But if you think Assuncao is going to win, period, then you have to pick him just for the value. So I'm torn on this one. I'll have a little bit of both guys in GPPs. But if the line was even, I'm taking Marlon.
Man, pre-tape, I was thinking the same thing, but, it's tough on this one. Marlon's no slouch, dude. And he wants it. He really wants this shit.
And does Rafael want it?
We're going to find out, man. Now, kicking off the pay-per-view. Now, a lot of people have been complaining about this pay-per-view, man, saying that it's not worth the $50-$60. I disagree, man. I mean, look, it might not be top whatever fighters, but look, Eric Silva versus Yancy Medeiros, for a fact. I mean, do we watch this sport for, don't we want to see exciting fights, man? Don't we want to see dudes knock each other out? Well, I'll tell you what, Yancy Medeiros, he's minus 140. Some money has come in there. And he's taking on Eric Silva, who's plus 120. What do you think?
Man, it's a tough fight. I'm gonna go with Yancy in this one just because I think, although Eric did look like for once he didn't break. His last fight, for once he did not break. He actually got dropped twice, and he actually kept composure, and he actually looked like a veteran out there and finishing Chagas. You know what I'm saying? But I'm gonna go with Yancy just by the chin factor. Yancy's got a chin, and I know Yancy won't quit. I mean, we saw that Trinaldo fight. You had to kill that dude, to put him out. Not even Dustin could put him out. You know what I'm saying? And but I know Eric. I think Chagas was just a little bit too overeager, too inexperienced, too young. Yancy's got experience, and I think at some point he will wobble Eric, and either finish him off with a choke or with strikes. But I think it's going to be a war in the process. Yancy's going to get clipped, and Yancy's going to get wobbled as well. And but I got Yancy by second round finish.
I mean, how many times do we got to learn our lessons with Eric Silva? You know what I mean? When he's fighting, I was going to say when he's fighting bums, he finishes them in the first round. But Luan Chagas is no slouch at all. So he showed that veteran experience that you were talking about. And not to mention, that fucking back take, dude. I mean, look, he's got flashes of brilliance, and he's always shown that throughout his career. I mean, his jiu-jitsu game, and not only that, he's knocked dudes out as well, but it's just he has these lapses in the middle of fights, and he tends to not win the big fight. But not saying that this is the big fight or anything, but I do think that Yancy is a similar fighter as him in the sense that, they both beat the same kind of guys and they lose to the same kind of guys. They're very exciting. It's either kill or be killed. But like you said, man, Yancy is the tougher guy. He's got the better chin, even though he eats a lot of flush punches. I mean, Jesus
Doesn't go
Christ.
down.
but
He will not go down.
you know, I think since he moved up to 170 pounds, I mean, you saw that fight with Sean Spencer, man. I mean, it looked like he just looked better in terms of his frame, in terms of his movement,
Energy levels.
the energy levels, his ability to take a strike, and
He was efficient with his energy.
if he weathers that first round storm, we know the deal here. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Yancey. And you know, since some money came in, you know that minus 150 ain't as good as that minus 110. So you know, hopefully someone bets Eric Silva, and then maybe I'll take a look at putting something on Yancey. What do you think, Kyle?
I think I'm going to disagree with you guys on this one. I always like Brazilians in Brazil. So if you're going to give me a dog like Eric Silva at plus 120, that's definitely tempting to me. I think it's going to be a dog fight, though. It's going to be fight of the night contender. So, I mean, you really don't know what you're going to get from Silva these days, so it's really hard to go in with your money on him. But like I said, I love especially Brazilian dogs in Brazil. So I'm definitely leaning towards the Eric Silva. I like him in DraftKings. I like Medeiros in DraftKings as well, though. So I think if you guys were going to be playing, you guys should be on Yancey. And if people like Silva, they should be on Silva. They're pretty evenly priced on there as well. Either one could get finished. Man, I'm just excited for this fight. I might stay off on a betting angle, but I'm looking forward to it.
Paulo Borrachinha. He's minus 275, and the comeback on Oluwale Bangboshe is plus 235. Nah, take it away, man.
Yeah, you know, Oluwale, decent stand-up. I mean, he's got power. He can fucking crack, you know what I'm saying? But Borrachinha can also crack, and he's got the jiu-jitsu angle. I mean, all his wins are by knockout besides one, but make no mistake about it, he has jiu-jitsu. He just doesn't, he chooses not to show it. You know, let's look at that. Let's look at Oluwale. I mean, he goes in there in his UFC debut against Uriah, takes a couple ground and pound shots, and finds his way out. Second fight, he fights on his way out, Serafian, does some little wushu stuff and catches him with a head kick and puts him out. His third fight against Cesar, he drops him in the first round, and when he didn't get the finish, what happened? He had nothing to show for it. He's huffing and puffing with his hands down, gets taken down, can't get up. I mean, I think when he gets tired, he has nothing to offer. As a betting man, I like Paulo just because I feel like if we can get through some exchanges for about 2-3 minutes, not get cracked. I mean, Oluwale, if they do exchange and they go out there and exchange, Paulo is definitely vulnerable. He will get clipped at some point. It's just a matter if he goes down. But if he can get through those 2-3 minutes, I think Oluwale's going to be absolutely gassed, and he has nothing to offer when he's tired. We'll take him down and choke him out, plain and simple. Oluwale has not proven that he can get back up. I mean, all he's shown is that he threw a left high kick and, you know, knocked out Serafian. Not saying that he can't crack. I've seen some of his local fights. He's got hands as well. But I just think that this kid, Borrachinha, has a clear path to victory. Get through 2-3 minutes of this fight, or in the second round, take him down, and you have it.
Yeah, pretty much. What are you thinking, Kyle?
I couldn't agree more. I think Oluwale has that puncher's chance. He's definitely violent. But I think if you're going to bet him, you should go with that first round plus 500. I could see if that's how he wins. That's how I see it being in the first round, just with a punch. Other than that, Borrachinha has his way with him. If he wants to take him down, I think he can do that, feed him on the ground. Or I think he can knock him out and just tease him on the feet, just do whatever he wants. So I'm going to go with Borrachinha on this one as well, for sure.
The thing that's interesting about this fight is that you got one guy in Borrachinha who's never been past the first round, and then you got another guy in Oluwale Bangboshe who has been past the first round, but he lost when he went past the first round. So, you know, I think I kind of learned a lesson last week on the Razak Al-Hassan fight in the sense that, you know, I put too much stock into, you know, I basically banked on him getting a knockout instead of, you know, looking at the cold hard reality that, you know, he hasn't been past the first round. And let's say that he ended up winning that fight and then he went on and took on another one, you know, but let's say he won this last one against Omari by first round knockout, right? You know, what happened here was bound to happen anyways. You know, he had to get that experience lesson. So with these guys, there's eventually going to be a time when Borrachinha, you know, has to go past that first round and, you know, we have to find out what he's all about. It's just this isn't going to be that time, They're going to stand and bang until one guy falls, but based on what I've seen, they're both sluggers, they both got power, but Paulo Borrachinha has the better technique, and I think that's going to be the difference here. So, when you got two sluggers, but one guy times the shots better and, sets it up better, and he's also physically bigger, and, he's got the hometown crowd. Not that I always favor that, but in a situation like this where we have seen Olawale quit, and we know that any potential factors against him, you got to look at that. So when you've seen a guy quit before, and now he's fighting in Brazil, people are going to be chanting, "You're going to die, va morrer." I got to go with Paulo Borrachinha here, so I'm going to complete the hat trick, boys. Now next up, and some money has came in on the old lion, young dinosaur. We got Vitor Belfort, as we like to say in Brazil. He's minus 160, and he's taking on Nate Marquardt, who's plus 140. And, it's interesting because Vitor Belfort is kind of a bully. You know what I mean? There's a different, vibe to each fight that he goes into. If he's going in, and I'm talking about post-TRT Vitor, right? If he's going in to fight like Chris Weidman or Jacare or Gegard Mousasi, he kind of knows that he can't bully these guys, and he kind of knows that, there's going to come that point where I'm going to have to check out. But when Vitor knows that he can beat you, he's a completely different guy. Like he's got that bully mentality. And how many times have we seen Nate Marquardt fold up? Now, don't get me wrong. Nate Marquardt's got an incredible highlight reel as well, The Wilson Gobea fight, the Tyron Woodley fight, the Damian Maia fight. Nate Marquardt, he's paid his dues as well, you know what I'm saying, man? He's no slouch. Even the fucking James Tahuna fight, man. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did he beat Dean Lister by submission? In the UFC?
UFC, like way back.
Yeah, bro. You know what I'm saying? So he's got some he's got some chips under the mantle. You know what I mean?
KO'd Campman.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that was here in Atlanta. But in this spot, man, even though not only is Vitor declining, but the way his body is looking every single fight progressively worse. You look at that fight between him and Kelvin, and it looked like he was melting out there, in terms of his physique. But I'll tell you one thing about that fight. Those shots that he threw against Kelvin would make Nate take a knee. Straight up. I think those are going to be the shots that put Nate down. And, the guys that have been beating Vitor lately, not only are they way higher caliber than Chris Weidman, but they've been taking down Vitor Belfort and pounding him out, man. And I don't think Nate Marquardt's really that kind of guy. I think Nate Marquardt's going to come out here, try to stand, and I think Vitor is going to get the better of the exchanges and knock out Nate Marquardt. So I think Vitor is going to go out on a win and retire, and hopefully, retire in the UFC, and then hopefully go to Ryzen and be able to, take that Brazilian help and, have some nice showcase fights.
Yeah, should be an entertaining fight, man. Someone's definitely going to hit the deck. Like you said, man, Nate's got a highlight reel. Vitor's got a highlight reel. Both legends in my eyes, in the sport. But like you said, man, I think Vitor is just going to have that hometown crowd behind him. Catch Nate with the straight left or anything. But don't count Nate out this fight, man. Nate could catch him and put him out too, man. I mean, look how many dudes Nate's caught in his career. But I'm just going with Vitor. But
and look how many dudes have caught Vitor.
Exactly. So, but I'll go with Vitor just crowd behind him.
Yeah. And Kyle, what are you thinking, man?
Man, I think we might be talking about this fight longer than the fight actually takes place. Man, either one of these guys could drop with one punch. I'm not exactly sure. I was talking to my boy Chris Lido earlier today, and we both started the day on Nate Marquardt. And I think we both ended up switching our picks by the end of the day to Vitor. It's in Brazil. That's probably the main reason. It's in Brazil. They're just trying to give Vitor a win on his way out. Both guys are so shot, and they both look terrible lately. So it's really, do you want to favor Vitor's hands, or do you think Marquardt can take it to the ground? I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen, but I guess I'm going to favor Vitor in this one. definitely a fight to target either way in DraftKings because I don't see this one going the distance. So whoever wins is definitely going to score enough points to win you a GPP. They're kind of going to have to be on your team. Whether you like picking this fight or not, I kind of think it has to be in your lineup. So whoever you like, throw them in your team. I'm going to go ahead and pick Vitor in this one, though.
The co-main event of the evening, Claudia Gadelha, minus 340. The comeback on Karolina Kowalkiewicz is plus 280. What do you think?
As a betting man, I got the fight starts round 3 prop at like minus 397 as just a little leg to add value. As far as the fight goes, Carolina is a slow starter. She pretty much loses that first round in most of her fights, I think. She keeps her left hand down, gets tagged with the right hands in that first round, but once she settles in, she completely takes over and starts just out-voluming you to a point where, when you butcher a man's body to the point where he just can't keep going, her cardio is just, out of this world, and that's the main weakness of Claudia Gadelha. Claudia comes out hard the first round, so I fully expect Claudia to not dominate the first round, but win the first round. But I think those next 2 rounds, I think she's going to struggle for takedowns, gas herself out. I know she moved to Albuquerque. She's training in elevation of somewhat. And, her cardio should be a little better. But that flight to Brazil now, I think she's a big muscle chick. And I just think Carolina's going to outwork her in the next 2 rounds. And, if that line gets back up to plus 3, if I win my bets, I'm going to be tempted to play that Carolina line. But, I like that fight starts round 3 prop. And I'm going with Kowalkiewicz.
Man, I just wish it was a 5-round fight because then
exactly.
I'd go big on Kowalkiewicz. Kyle, man, what's the DK perspective for this one?
Man, this is. I think it's a Gadelha, just because of the takedowns. You always want takedowns in DraftKings, so she could land 5 to 10 takedowns in this fight. Who knows? And that just racks up points. So I definitely like her. However, she's a huge favorite on DraftKings as well as the betting line. So if you're leaning towards KK, you also have to go her way because if she wins, she's going to put up so many significant strikes that she's going to win you a GPP if she puts up the W. However, is she going to be able to stay on her feet long enough? That's the question. I'm still torn on this fight, man. The odds, they make me want to pick KK, but then it's in Brazil. And can she stop the takedowns for 3 rounds? Maybe she could stop them in the 3rd round, but by then it's a little bit too late. So I'm going to go ahead and take Gadelha, whatever, in this fight. But I'm looking forward to it, actually, for a women's fight. I'm really looking forward to this one.
I want to bet Carolina. It's just that if she loses, I know exactly how she's going to lose. She's going to get the better of the striking exchanges, and then she's going to give up the takedown to that blast double at the worst possible times and lose the rounds. And that's the worst way to lose a bet, man. So, I kind of don't want to go through that, but at the same time, Claudia Gadelha does gas out every single fight. She does have the roughest weight cuts, and if you want to be honest here, her best win is Courtney Casey and Jessica Aguilar.
In the UFC, yeah.
At least, Carolina went out there and destroyed Rose.
Marcos, Rose.
You know what I mean? It was a split decision, but it wasn't really a split decision because the way she was landing those knees in the clinch, the way she broke Rose Namajunas and then almost finished her in the 3rd round, Carolina's no slouch at all, and Carolina's coming in prepared. I don't know if you watched that video on the embedded, but man, that hand speed, that determination, you can see that look in her eyes, man. And and Claudia Gadelha, she's been training at Novo União for years, and maybe she did the right thing by moving to Albuquerque. But some people say that you should stay loyal to the people that brought you up. But that's worked for a lot of world champions. But then for other people, they do need to move to a different camp and get that specialized attention. So we're gonna see if that works out for her. So basically, the only thing that's holding me back is these fucking takedowns, man. Are we gonna be able to deal with this? Are we gonna is she gonna kill the clock on top of us? That's all I need to know, man. Because if not, I think we take this.
I mean, at +3, I'm willing to find out.
Yeah, so if it gets back to +3, maybe we'll take a look. But as of now, I am passing, but I will pick Carolina to get it done. The main event of the evening, Jose Aldo, he's -150. The comeback on Max Holloway is +130. Shaq, I mean, this is the most anticipated featherweight fight in a very long time. Max Holloway's on a 10-fight win streak. He's got more UFC wins than Jose Aldo. And now he's taking on the great, the legend, Jose Aldo.
Yeah, man. I'm a fan of Jose's the greatest featherweight of all time. I mean, I remember watching that dude in the WEC kill Cub Swanson with knees, Rolando Perez with knees, Faber kicking his leg off, And came to the UFC and did the same thing, He had that little mishap against Conor. Shit happens. Everyone has to hit the deck at some point. And he comes back and looks pretty good against Frankie. He is the greatest featherweight of all time. But the run that Max Holloway has been on has been, pretty incredible. A 10-fight win streak. I remember when he fought Cub Swanson, I thought Cub at the time was going to put him down just because, Cub Swanson was on that nice little streak. He was coming off the Edgar loss, but, it was Cub Swanson. We saw all that little crazy, flashy stuff he would do in the cage, and I think Max didn't have a chance. But then when that fight happened, Max put on a clinic. That distance control, the switching of the stances. Cub never had a chance in that fight. And it just carried on. The way he beat Jeremy, he fought Jeremy exactly how you're supposed to fight Jeremy. Then he goes in there and, puts on a clinic versus Ricardo Lamas, makes Charles quit to a body shot like, how he should. And I just think one thing I've been seeing with Aldo is, he's still the same guy. He's so good at stealing rounds, or just, controlling rounds, staying ahead in rounds, and winning those 49-46 decisions. And one thing I've been noticing is that, especially in the Edgar fight, even in the Chad Mendes fight, if you put multiple punches together and make him move back, you can catch him on the end of those combinations, like that second and third punch. If you watch that Edgar fight, watch it and you'll see what I'm talking about. Every time he moves back, Edgar would catch him with that second and third punch. Granted, Frankie doesn't have much power, so it doesn't do shit to him. But with a guy like Max who's switching and doing all these, not traditional techniques, I think it's going to throw him off. And I think, of course, Aldo will win the first round, maybe the first two. But as the fight goes on, I just think the straightness of the punches is going to catch Aldo at some point. And I think Max is going to put on a show those third, fourth, and fifth rounds and become the new champ.
Kyle Marley, let me ask you something from a DK perspective, though, man. Is this the situation where I put both Max Holloway and Jose Aldo in my DK King? My DK lineup?
Yeah, man, I would say you definitely should do that, especially in cash games, where you're by cash games, it's either a head-to-head or a 50-50, a double-up, or a three-man, something where you have a decently good chance of winning. And basically in those games, you just want to plan on the other person making enough mistakes to lose. So I love having both main event fighters, especially in a fight that could go 5 rounds in a war like this one, because you're just going to rack up all those points for 5 rounds, and you're guaranteeing yourself the winner. So I absolutely love having both these guys in a cash game, and I can pretty much tell you right now that I'm probably going to. GPPs, I'm not sure, man. You might be able to win a GPP with both these guys in your lineup, too. If they can combined score more than 160 points, I think you're sitting pretty with that. So I'm not exactly sure about GPPs. That could be a real sneaky contrarian way of winning one. However, my way of going about this in DraftKings is whatever lineup I make with Jose Aldo, I'm going to make that same exact lineup with Holloway. So I'm going to throw one lineup away, but I know I'm going to have the winner in another, so hopefully my other 5 spots can hit. So that's how I'm looking at it from a DraftKings perspective. But from just picking this fight, man, I can't wait. This is such a great fight. But I am going to go with Aldo. I'm going to go with the Brazilian. And Brazil, I can't stress that enough. I love picking Brazilians in Brazil. And we're talking about one of the best, if not the best Brazilian of all time. The line has shifted on him a little bit, so I don't know if I'm going to lay -150 on him. But if I'm picking winners, if we have a straight line on this one, I'm going to go with Jose Aldo. I think he's just too quick. I think he's going to bring the leg kicks back in this fight. I don't know why, but he was not using those in his last fight with Frankie Edgar in the first 3 rounds. But I don't know if that's just something that he's trying out or what. But I think he's got to bring that back, and those leg kicks can really help him win this fight. So I'm really looking forward to it. Holloway could win. I would not be surprised, but I could also see a really, really close decision, maybe some hometown cooking in this one. Overall, I'm going to take Aldo. I would not be shocked, though, if Holloway wins. I do think we will see a rematch in the future, though. And the way I see it, Aldo in this one, Holloway in the next one, probably in Vegas or something.
Man, I honestly think the whole, bad judging in Brazil thing is a myth, man, because the worst ever decision to come out of Brazil was Phil Davis versus Lyoto Machida, and the American won. You know what I'm saying? So, if Max wins fair and square, I think they'll give it to him, in terms of going to the judges' scorecards. But if it's, a close decision that could go either way, then, okay, yeah, probably Jose will get it. But if it's clear, I don't think there's going to be any bullshit there, man. So, But
yeah, I don't see it being a clear one. I would think I really think this is kind of almost a 50-50 fight. So it could be legit. You don't even know who wins. You're not going to be mad either way. But those judges want to get out of there alive, so they're going to go ahead and take Aldo kind of thing. I think it's that close of a fight. But, if you're a judge and you're in Brazil with people screaming at the fighters that they're going to die, who are you going to pick in a close decision? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I feel you. Max is a gamer, though. But here's the thing, man. Let's talk about Jose. Obviously, like you said, man, best featherweight of all time. And, when you go back and you rewatch these fights, the kind of athlete this guy is, and not only that, the kind of fighter he is, man. He's perfect with his technique, and he's so much more explosive than everyone. The first 2 rounds of every fight, he's the best pound-for-pound fighter for those first 2 rounds, man. No one can hang with him in those first 2 rounds, but after those first 2 rounds, he does start to fade historically. That's always been the knock on him, man. With guys like Ricardo Lamas and, Mark Hominick, they can only capitalize in the 5th round. I don't think he's going to get Max Holloway out of there because, with Hominick, the dude had a fucking thing coming out of... He had another head coming out of his head, and he was still in there in that 5th round. Ricardo Lamas took an ass whooping and was still in there in the 5th round. Frankie Edgar got his ass whooped for 50 minutes and was still in there, in the 5th round. So I feel like Max Holloway is going to be able to, I'm not going to say weather the storm, but I'm going to say that I think he's going to be able to hang in there in those first 2 rounds, and I truly believe he's going to lose the first 2 rounds. When they're both fresh, man, Aldo's the better fighter, man. He's faster, he's more explosive, and his techniques, the leg kicks, that left hook to the liver followed by that right roundhouse, man. And when he did that to Ricardo Lamas, and obviously Faber back in the day, it's unbelievable. But what's so funny is how he beat Frankie Edgar, and that entire fight he fought in second gear. Like he coasted, but when it was time to strike, it was devastating, man. And like the first round, the way he won, he didn't throw shit for the first 4 minutes, and then he just threw one straight and one knee.
He took the round.
And he took the round clearly. And it was like, damn. And we love the experts at winning the close decisions, but, this kid Max is something special, man. And, let's talk about a couple things with him. Firstly, that fight with Ricardo Lamas, he fought the entire fight southpaw. You know what I'm saying? He has that ability. And his fight with Pettis, he fought the entire fight orthodox. He did a little bit of stance switching, which he is known for. But it shows the kind of diversity in his striking. And, he's a thinker out there. You know what I mean? At first he kind of does have that tall man's defense. But once he starts to, pick up on your timing, he starts to really pick dudes apart, and he finishes dudes that don't often get finished. No one's ever finished Anthony Showtime Pettis, and you could blame it on the weight cut, you can blame it on this or that, but Showtime didn't look bad those first 2 rounds, man. He looked better there than, in my opinion, than he did in his win against Charles Oliveira, man. He came to fight. Even though Pettis had a bad weight cut or he broke his hand, or you can blame it on this or that, Pettis is still a guy that's been doing martial arts his whole life. Pettis is still the guy that jumped off the cage and, kicked Benson Henderson's head off. to finish Anthony Pettis is a big fucking deal. But look, we're taking a step up in Jose Aldo, but great champions, they rise to the occasion, man. And I think that, or at least I'm hoping because I got money on it, right? I think that Max is going to be able to do that. And the way I think he's going to be able to deal with the leg kicks is, a couple ways. Firstly, the switching stances, checking leg kicks. I mean, we're not talking about a short wrestler anymore, which is what that's what Jose's been fighting his entire career. Except the one time he fought a long striker, and let's not talk about that time. But I kind of wish the Aldo versus McGregor fight went 1 minute and 13 seconds instead of 13 seconds, because then people wouldn't call it a fluke, even though I don't consider it a fluke at all.
But another thing is, man, Aldo's been straying away from the leg kicks. I mean, even the Chad Mendes fight, he didn't throw that many. Then the Conor fight, of course, and then the Edgar fight. I mean, his leg kick frequency is dropping like off the chart. So I'm really not worried about the leg kicks, to be honest.
Well,
hey, do you guys think that broken leg of Silva has anything to do with that?
I don't know, man. I think that, he'd been doing the leg kicks for years, and, maybe he just had to evolve and try new things. Because I'll tell you what, man, his hands and the way that he moves his head and he pivots, he cuts angles and, dude, I mean, some of those movements, but they're so explosive. I mean, he has the best takedown defense in the history of our sport. I don't know if that's true in terms of percentage, but in terms of technique, I've never seen anything like it. Like, you watch that second fight against Chad Mendes, and Chad takes him down, and the way that Aldo would move his hips was unlike anything I've ever seen before in my life. And so, back to what we were saying, man. When this fight starts off and they're both fresh, I do think that Max is going to be getting tagged a bit, but we know Max has an amazing chin. I mean, you saw that fight with Conor McGregor, and one doesn't simply take that left-hand shot. I know people like to make excuses of, Conor was injured, Conor, he wrestled, but don't forget, he was injured and he wrestled in the second half of the second round. They still stood up for a good half of the fight. And you saw what happened there. I mean, and also let's talk about that third round. People don't like to talk about how Max landed a nice head kick on Conor there, and he kind of buckled him or dropped him. And just watch it. It's in that third round, But bottom line, that's in the past. He was a kid back then, man. He took that fight on short notice. Now he's on a 10-fight win streak, and all great title runs come to an end. But in terms of the stylistic matchup, I do think Jose Aldo's going to win these first 2 rounds. And he historically gasses, but these other guys haven't been able to capitalize. I think that Max Holloway is the guy that's going to capitalize. The way he steps through with his punches is the way he covers distance. And it's so interesting because, he's got a 68-inch, reach, but he fights tall. You know what I'm saying? It's so interesting, and it's because of his stance switching. It's because of the way that he covers ground. And when you start blocking high, he won't just throw one body shot. He'll throw 2 body shots, and then he'll follow up with a spinning back kick. He's unbelievable, man. But he's fighting the greatest featherweight of all time, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But I think that Max Holloway is going to be coming out the new champion. So I put 5 units on it at plus 115, and may the best man win. I totally understand the argument for picking Aldo because, look, man, he's going to be faster than Holloway. He's going to be more explosive, and he's going to be able to catch him with counters coming in and stuff like that. Maybe get off on the leg kicks if he can capitalize on Max switching stances at a certain time or not checking the kicks. But at the end of the day, man, I think Max is going to overwhelm him with volume in the last 3 rounds and take it over, man. Maybe a late finish, but most likely a 48-47 in Brazil. I know it sounds crazy because it's in Brazil, man, but I think he's going to clearly win. I don't think it's going to be iffy. I think he's going to make a statement, so I'm going with Max as the new champ.
I like the confidence, man. Although, I mean, man, the one scary thing, especially about a Max bet, man, it seems like everybody is on Holloway, especially on Twitter. It seems like everybody is on Holloway, and these big-ass casinos in Vegas were not built on everybody being right.
You're right.
So even that alone makes me lean towards Aldo a little bit more. That plus the Brazil. But, I mean, I can't hate on your bet. I think I might even have to shy away from bets on this fight because I am scared of betting against Max Holloway, period. And as I said, I'm going to play it both ways on DraftKings. But I definitely like how you're taking a big, hard 5-unit stance on the dog there. Good luck, man.
I appreciate that, brother. But I mean, you're so right, bro. You couldn't be more right. You know what I mean? And I follow that philosophy that you're saying, that there's no power in numbers in this game, and you do get worried when everyone agrees with you. And but that's not true, because a lot of money came in on Aldo. You know what I'm saying? So in terms of the actual betting public, like, let's say I don't check Twitter, let's say I just look at the line movement. Aldo's getting all the love, man. He went from a minus 105 to 150, so.
True. I'd like to see the ticket numbers on that, though, first. I mean, I'm thinking that it's still more tickets on Holloway, but the bigger money is now coming in on Aldo.
Yeah, that makes sense. The sharp money, the allegedly sharp money, we're going to find out Saturday night. You know what I'm saying? There's only one way to know, and I've only bet against Aldo twice, because one doesn't simply bet against Aldo. And especially Max bet against Aldo in Brazil,
Max bet on Max.
Exactly. It takes balls, son. But, I max bet against Aldo in the Conor fight, and then I put 2 units on Frankie against Aldo. So, we saw how both those fights went. So, this is the third time, and hopefully, even though I'm 1 for 1, hopefully third time is a charm. So, we're going to find out. But let's get down to these prelims, man. We got Luan Chagas. He's minus 255. The comeback on Jim Wallhead is plus 215.
Yeah, Chagas and Wallhead, when it first got announced, I thought Chagas was going to smoke him. And, Wallhead, his debut, it didn't go so good. I mean, he pretty much stared at Ayari for 2 rounds and got counter-striked. But Chagas, as a betting man, I kind of had to shy away from it because, I mean, I think he should go out there and handle Wallhead, but he just loves the war. He loves the brawl. He loves to expose himself in exchanges with his hands down. And, although Wallhead is past his prime, in my opinion, he's had so many fights in the UK, but, I mean, he's capable of some pretty impressive things. I mean, on the local scene, I mean, I've seen him KO dudes, stiff, and he actually is a good fighter. It's just I think he's past his prime. I'm going to go with Chagas, but I am going to pass away from a bet just because Chagas' fighting style, but the pick is Chagas.
Dude, I was so close to betting on Chagas here. I am picking him, I've been impressed with him in his UFC run. He went from fighting jobbers on the regional scene to all of a sudden they give him Serginho Moraes on short notice. And, we thought he was going to lose that and come back. And I'll tell you what, man, he goes out there, he drops him with a head kick, he drops him with a hook in the first round. And at one point, I'll tell you the balls on this kid. He tried to take Serginho's back. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's and he's only 23 years old, fighting a guy that that tapped out Neil Magny, and I got a lot of respect for Chagas, but I also have a lot of respect for Jim Wallhead, man. I mean, this is a guy that paid his dues, man. You know what I mean? A while back, they were talking about him as a hot prospect, and he had a couple of setbacks, but he said, man, my dream is to be in the UFC, and now he's in the UFC. The first fight didn't go his way, but the first fight against Ayari, that's not the kind of fighter that he looks good against. He doesn't look good against point fighters. He looks good when someone comes to fight him. Luan Chagas is going to come to fight him, but the only thing here is that Luan's the younger, fresher guy with the better chin, and these two are going to stand and bang. Not saying that Jim Wallhead can't, and Jim's got a judo background, let's not forget that. He took down Danny Hot Chocolate and full mounted him, and then got fucking knocked out. But, aside from that, man, the way his striking looked against Moraes, and then obviously the Eric Silva fight, he was dropping Eric Silva all over the place. It was just simply a matter of seasoning. And I think now with his 2 UFC fights that did go to the third round, I think he's going to come out here prepared. His career's on the line, but also Wallhead's career is on the line. So both these guys, their backs are against the wall. And sometimes when that happens, fighters try to fight safe, but the way that these two match up, they're going to go out on their shield, and they'll probably get a 3rd chance in the UFC. Or a 4th chance, rather. You know what I mean? If Chagas loses and he puts up a fight, oh yeah, you think it's over for them?
It's over for Loser's going home.
Yo, Kyle, what are you thinking, man? Because, I mean, we can all agree Chagas and Wallhead are going to slug this one out.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with Chagas on this one. Probably by finish. I mean, I like him on the feet or on the ground, I think. I've been impressed by him in both. I mean, he hadn't got a win yet in the UFC, but I was impressed by both, by the draw and the loss. And Wallhead's 37. They're putting him in Brazil basically to end his career and bring up this 23-year-old. So, yeah, I'm going to have to say, especially in DraftKings, I think, Chagas will be a pretty good pick. And I'm going to be fading Wallhead.
Yuri Alcantara is minus 330. The comeback on Brian Kelleher is plus 270. Now, Kyle, I heard you competed with Brian Kelleher before.
No, I didn't compete with him. He was just trying to win his entry into the suite with me at UFC 205. I was already in there with the DraftKings qualifiers, so we had already all qualified for a tournament where we were going to compete again at UFC 205, and we were all in the same suite together. And they ended up changing the last seat into what's it, Helwani's show called the MMA Hour. New York Rick got to pick a video from Twitter where people, I think they hashtag something like Rick's Ticks, something like that. And the winner was going to come and join our suite and watch the fights. And he actually submitted one, and he sang a song about the MMA Hour, and he tried to win his way into this via a song. He did not win. And, again, I think he's not going to win this fight either. I think they're putting him in Brazil. I'm going with Alcantara in this. Long time ago when we were talking about Carlos Jr. fight, I said I was thinking about him in a parlay. This was that second leg of the parlay. Yuri Alcantara, Carlos Jr. That pays a little bit over even. I think you got I don't know what that is, minus 110 or something like that. I like that quite a bit. I'm going to end up doing that. I haven't seen a whole lot of tape on Brian Boom, other than, him singing a song, trying to win his way into the suite. But I'm a big fan of Alcantara. I think he can beat a lot of people in this division. And I think Brian left for Brazil like last night, something like that, and he got the call less than a month ago. So that's just not a good scenario when you're going over to Brazil fighting a guy like Alcantara, and Alcantara's only a minus 330. And the last thing is, what's Brian? I think he's 16-7. That's his record on a six-fight win streak. So he was 10-7 before that against people we don't even know, and now you're going to go over there and face Alcantara. Oh man, I just don't see that being good for him. So Alcantara all the way. DraftKings wise, I'm going to have 0 Brian. I won't say I'm going to go all in on Alcantara, but I like him quite a bit.
We're huge fans of Alcantara over here, but man, that last fight, oh my God, he had to dig deep to get that knee bar on Luke Sanders. And, this kid, Brian Kelleher, the thing we got to be worried about, because it is a Yuri Alcantara fight, is Yuri ending up on his back. But on the feet, man, I mean, he's going to, you know what Yuri does, man. That front kick to that hook, man. You know what I'm saying? That's what he does every fight. And if it's time to flying knee, it's time to flying knee. If it's time to spin, it's time to spin. I fucking love Yuri, man. But, we just got to be worried if Brian's going to get on top of us for extended periods of time. Now, don't get me wrong. Yuri's pretty fucking good on his back, too. I'm just saying the times when he has lost in the UFC, that's how he lost. He got grinded. So, as long as he doesn't get grinded here, he should take this. And, as a pick, I'll pick Yuri, but I'll be passing from a bet.
Yeah, betting Yuri isn't a bad idea now that I think about it. But like you said, I mean, he has dropped the ball in the past. I mean, I know you guys remember that Frankie Sainz fight when he was like minus 600 or something like that, and he got grinded for 3 rounds. But like you said, I mean, he is coming off a devastating ass whooping he just took. Even though he won, I mean, he just took a severe ass whooping from Sanders. But, I mean, this dude Kelleher is coming into Brazil for his debut. I think he'll get overwhelmed. I mean, Yuri's put dudes like Ricardo Lamas out stiff, out cold at 155. So I think Yuri's just going to be too much for Kelleher.
Matthew Lopez, he's minus 200. The comeback on Johnny Eduardo is plus 170. Now, Johnny Eduardo is a very popular underdog pick on this card for a lot of people. And maybe he'll come through. He'll come through if Matthew Lopez decides to test his stand-up against Coach Johnny. You know what I'm saying, man? But And you saw that last fight with Mitch Gagnon when Mitch Gagnon put him down hard. But I'll tell you what, Matthew Lopez, he showed his poise, his composure. He got back up and he went on to win that fight, man. He's a tough grinder. The kid comes to fight, man. And his UFC debut, he took it on short notice, and he was getting the better of the scrambling exchanges against a guy like Haniyaya, which early in the fight. That's very tough to do, but he did gas out. It was his debut, but I'll tell you what, he came back better. Now, with Coach Johnny, if you watch his fight with Eddie Wineland, the way he looked in that fight, that's not quite the guy that we're going to be getting in this fight right here. You know what I'm saying? That's not quite the guy that fought Aljamain Sterling or Manny Gambarian. So, I am going to favor Matthew Lopez. I think that he knows that, look, man, this shit's in Brazil. I'm fighting the Novo União striking coach. There's no reason to, play around. Let's go out and grind this guy. And, hey, if Johnny Eduardo does have that, that signature, that patented Novo União takedown defense, then much respect. I love Coach Johnny. He's my biggest underdog play of all time when he fought Eddie Wineland, man. So I got all the respect in the world. But I think this is a bad matchup, and I know people thought the line was kind of off or whatever, but I do completely understand it, man. I think that the younger, fresher guy is going to go out there and, grind out the very tough veteran, man, and go back on Fight Pass and check out the 1993 or 96 bout between Takanori Gomi and Coach Johnny Eduardo.
Yeah, this Lopez kid, he can wrestle he's a 4-time state champion. And, some of those takedowns he was hitting against Gagnon, who's a decent wrestler himself, he was hitting lateral drops. Those entries in the third round, he completely broke him and dominated him in them second and third rounds. And, we've seen, Johnny Eduardo have no answer for takedowns. Like in the Aljamain Sterling fight, when he got on his back, he had no answer for it. And we've seen him lose fights, due to getting a little, grinded here and there. But Lopez, if he chooses to go out there and strike with him, I think he's a little too loose. I think he'll get caught. He got caught against Gagnon getting square. And but I think he's going to edge this fight out just with the wrestling. I think Johnny will not be able to hang with him in that department, and I think Lopez will grind out a decision.
Kyle?
Oh, man. I don't know, man. You guys might actually change my mind, especially since you said Johnny is going to be a popular underdog pick. So, in my mind, I'm more of a DraftKings guy. I've almost switched, not completely over, but I've definitely done a big switch from the gambling side over to DraftKings. And it's a whole different game over there, but ownership, basically popularity, is a big-time thing. So if you think Johnny's going to be a big-time pick and everyone's going to be on him, that makes me want to pick Lopez, who's going to be he's going to fly under the radar as the favorite. So if he wins and everyone's picking Eduardo, then I'm jumping the field, and I already got a good shot right there. So maybe you change my mind. I do think Matthew Lopez is the better fighter, and if it was in America, I'm picking him for sure. However, me, I love the Brazilians in Brazil, so that's what I was thinking originally. Was I like the Brazilian dog in this one. But I really didn't have a big, any big lean on him. So if Eduardo, like you're saying, is going to be popular, I'm with you guys. Let's go Lopez.
The curtain jerker, Davison Alcantara Figueiredo, is minus 140, and he's taking on Marco Psycho Beltran. And I saw his name was Alcantara, and I thought maybe there was an affiliation. There is an affiliation. He trains out, with the Morajo brothers, with Yuri and Ildemar. I don't know if he's at Greg Jackson's with Yuri, but the affiliation on Tapology said Morajo brothers. So, you know what I'm saying? So he's got that fighting blood in him, man. I'll tell you that right now. And you remember we were watching his regional scene fight, and we thought his opponent was him,
Yeah.
and they go out there, and Davison gets dropped hard, and we think the fight's almost over. Then he comes out and finishes his opponent by knockout. It was unbelievable, man. Man, this kid's a scrapper, man. I feel like I still don't know enough about him, but what I've watched is that he's got that fighting spirit, he's got the technique, and he's going to be a very exciting guy to watch in the flyweight division, man. You know, a division that I'm personally a big fan of, but it's always cool to see new guys coming in to that weight class. And with Marco Psycho Beltran, I was very surprised that he made the decision to go down to 125 pounds, man. You know, even though he did lose his last fight to a very tough guy in Joe Soto, prior to that, he was on a 3-fight winning streak in the UFC. You know, he won one fight on tough against Guido Canetti, who's also in the UFC. And the fight he lost was against Jose Quinones, who is also in the UFC. You know what I mean? So he's been fighting some pretty tough guys. So it comes down to a couple things here. It comes down to, how's this weight cut going to be for Marco Psycho Beltran? Because I always thought he was kind of a big guy for 135. So now he's cutting down to 125. You know, maybe he's got an amazing nutritionist with him. We're going to have to find out what he looks like. So that's a question mark. And then with Davison, it is that UFC debut. But, man, the kid comes to bang. I'll tell you that right now. So tough call. But you know what? I'm going to go with the newcomer here.
Yeah, I'm all over the newcomer here. You know, when the fight got announced, I was hoping he'd be the underdog, but things didn't work out that way. Like you said, Beltran's dropping down to 25, which from 35, him already being a tall guy, I mean, I'm assuming that's going to be a deadly weight cut, dropping all that body fat to get to 125. And I mean, his chin's already not that solid, you know what I'm saying? So this dude Davison can crack. I've seen him put dudes out stiff on the local scene. And I think he's going to do that here. He's got that hometown Brazilian crowd behind him. I don't think the UFC jitters will be that much of an issue, at least not yet. But I think he's going to have that crowd behind him. I think he's going to lay out Marco Beltran.
Kyle?
Man, I haven't seen enough yet of this Davison kid. I heard about him for the first time last week via Will Martin. So I looked for him today mainly on YouTube. I watched a couple fights that I could find, but it was just such a busy day at work. I didn't get to watch them all. So I still got to do some research on this kid, but I'm really excited to watch him. And since you guys are high on him as well, I'm going to agree with both of you and pick him as well, because Beltran is definitely beatable. And we got the Brazilian. Give me the Brazilian in Brazil. So, yeah, I'm going to agree with you guys, but I still got to do my research on this kid.
I'm high on him, but I still don't know enough about him. You know, let's just put it that way, because he has been fighting. You know, I respect anyone that steps inside that cage, but let's be honest, he has been fighting jobbers. So, you know, Marco Psycho Beltran, you know, you can make the argument he's a jobber, but at least he does have, you know, 4 UFC fights under his belt and 2 fights in the Ultimate Fighter. So he's experienced, you know what I mean? So it's going to be his first real test, and if he goes out there and passes with flying colors, or even if he takes an L and comes back better, man, you know, I think this is going to be a good fight. So I'm pumped about it. Now, before we get out of here, you know, we got to talk about the fight to watch and the fighter to watch. So Shaq, what is the fight to watch for UFC 220?
Hold up, guys. Hold on. We can't have the main event as a fight to watch, because that is the fight to watch. So let's make a rule: no main event. How about that?
All right, deal.
All right,
Done.
my fight to watch is gonna be Wallhead versus Chagas. I think it's gonna be a back and forth war. Someone's gonna eventually break and, you know, go down, and I think the loser is going home.
I couldn't agree more. Even though they're both bangers, so there could be a case like when Matt Brown lost like 3 or 4 in a row and they gave him another chance. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's not Matt Brown exactly. Hey, Kyle, what is the fight to watch, man?
I'm going to go ahead and pick with the banger, Wallhead versus Borrachinha. Man, that could be a real fun first round. Just bang them out war. So I'm looking forward to that one. Let's see if Borrachinha is deserving of all the hype that he's getting, because Wallhead can definitely pack a punch. So I'm looking forward to that one. That's my fight to watch.
If there's one fight aside from the main event that I want to tell my friends to tune into, it's Eric Silva versus Yancy Medeiros. Look, win or lose, Eric Silva has never been in a boring fight. And Yancy Medeiros, exactly the same thing, man. So, you know for a fact that these two are going to go out there, whether it's a knockout, a submission, or a 3-round war. This is the kind of fight that you want to tune into. It's a perfect pay-per-view opener, and I am very excited for that. So, guys, we got to get down to the fighter to watch. So, Shaq.
My fighter to watch is going to be Carlos Jr. here, man. I think he's going to not turn the corner, but establish himself as like a threat to the top 15 at 185, and I think he's going to break Spicy.
Kyle?
From the sounds of it, I'm thinking this Davison Alcantara kid is the fighter to watch. Just basically on the hype that I'm hearing. So since I haven't done my full research, I'm also going to go ahead and pivot over to Vitor Belfort, man. His last UFC fight in Brazil, this is like his one chance to get a win. And I feel like that's how most people want to see him go out. And except if you don't like people who do TRT, then you're probably hating both these guys. But Vitor Belfort in his last UFC fight, I'm thinking he's the fighter to watch. We'll see if he can get it done.
My fighter to watch is Max Bless Holloway, man. I mean, look, this kid came into the UFC with a 4-0 record. He's literally grown before our eyes, and now he's on a 10-fight win streak. He fought McGregor early in his career, went all 3 rounds, 10-fight win streak, made it all the way to the longtime king, Jose Aldo, and he now, not only that, he's fighting him in Brazil, which many people would have a big objection to do. Now, man, we're going to have to find out to see what happens. Is he good enough to beat Jose Aldo? I cannot wait to find out. And conversely, Jose Aldo, to come back from that McGregor loss and look unbelievable against Frankie Edgar, and now potentially, defend the belt against Max Holloway, man, I cannot wait for that fight, and Max Holloway is my fighter to watch. Now, guys, we did it. UFC 212 this Saturday. Make sure you buy the pay-per-view, and let them know where they can follow you, Shaq.
Follow me at MMA Genius 05.
Yes, sir. Kyle, let them know what's up, man.
You can follow me, Big Marley 3, on Twitter. I got head-to-heads posted on DraftKings if you want some. Or if you come at the king, you best not miss.
And you can follow me on Twitter at Best Fight Picks. You can get my plays on bestfightpicks.com. Subscribe to Half the Battle on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Stitcher. Hook up that 5-star review. Thank you very much. And until the next time, let's cash these bets.